The main event for Impact Wrestling's next pay-per-view, Bound for Glory, has been revealed at the latest Impact Wrestling television tapings. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of Impact Wrestling. So let's talk about Bound for Glory. Now, I did a video, when was it? Yesterday, talking about Impact Emergence. Of course, Impact Emergence was Impact Wrestling's latest big event. It was actually an Impact Plus event, not an actual traditional pay-per-view. They only have 4 of those per year, the biggest of which, depending on who you are, sometimes some people say Slammiversary, some say Bound for Glory. Traditionally, it was meant to be Bound for Glory, but I feel like in recent years, with Slammiversary being an anniversary show, and if you look at some of the bigger events in more recent history, you could argue the bigger events, debuts, etc. have happened around Slammiversary. Nevertheless, Bound for Glory is meant to be Impact Wrestling's version of WrestleMania. It's their biggest show of the year, and coming out of Impact Emergence on Friday, the big discussion was, and we spoke about this during the Emergence video that we dropped here on the channel, was who is going to be the next challenger for Josh Alexander. Of course, Josh Alexander defeated Alex Shelley to retain his Impact World Championship at Impact Emergence. Fantastic main event. It was all really about Alex Shelley going into it. It was about Alex Shelley having his first Impact World Championship opportunity, his first World Championship opportunity just in general, ever. So it was a really great match, a real great short program, only going to be a sort of a month-long program, but it really was fantastic. But the big question we had coming out of that was, who was going to be next? And I did question this. I said, looking at the landscape right now of Impact Wrestling, and this has been the issue for a while, I think, for Impact, truly for the last year or so, maybe a little bit longer, 18 months. The biggest question, in my opinion, about Impact has been who is that main event guy? Obviously, we've got Josh Alexander now. He's the guy that's got Impact Wrestling, the company, on its back. He's the world champion. He's the one that's having fantastic matches every single month. He's the one that, frankly, I think is going to hold the championship for a really, really long time. They're going to do, in my opinion, no joke, I think they're going to do a year-long plus reign for the championship. And the reason that is because I don't see anyone legitimately who could be the one to take the championship off him. The other guy would be Moose, but they've had their feud. It went on for a really long time, and I don't see them revisiting that anytime soon. So the big question coming out of Emergence, of course, was who is going to be that next guy? Who's going to be the one to challenge Josh Alexander for the Impact World Championship at the next big event, that being Bound for Glory? Well, we do have an answer. Now, of course, guys, spoilers are ahead, so I will give you a few seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to get into spoiler territory here. Now, of course, Impact Wrestling, coming out of Emergence, had a set of television tapings. I believe they're 2-day tapings in Chicago. And PW Insider is reporting that at the Impact Wrestling television tapings in Chicago, Eddie Edwards won a top contenders elimination match to get an opportunity at the Impact World Championship. He will face Josh Alexander at Bound for Glory on October 7th. So it's kind of, this is what it is with Eddie Edwards, isn't it? Look, Eddie Edwards is an Impact Wrestling guy. He is the heart and soul of Impact Wrestling. He's a guy that's been there. Gosh, when did Eddie Edwards make his debut of Impact at this point? 2012, 13? He's been there close to a decade, and legitimately for an entire decade. I don't know if he's had opportunities to move elsewhere. You know, Impact was really, it didn't work out with the American Wolves in NXT, and then they went to Impact Wrestling, and since then, he started off as a tag team, and then he's transitioned into a singles guy. As for a long period of time, he was a singles big baby face, again, multiple-time world champion, 2-time world champion, and his act had become somewhat a little bit stale in sort of, the early part of this year, latter part of last year, turned heel with Honor No More, and I wouldn't say he's been completely rejuvenated. I'm still trying my best to sort of boo him or dislike him as a character. The issue is with Eddie Edwards is that he's just totally likable, and I understand that they're trying to make him this big heel, and by turning his back on Impact Wrestling and saying that Impact has lost its honor, or lost its soul a long time ago, and all that kind of stuff, and it does put him back in a main event picture. I still do sort of struggle to really see him as that heel. I think he's just such a good baby face, and he's such a and not like, you know, your traditional rugged, good-looking babyface. I mean your underdog babyface, the person that you can believe in and you relate to and you sympathize to because they're just like you. That's what Eddie Edwards is so great at and does so well. But Eddie Edwards, look, because of his longevity with Impact Wrestling, because of his tenure with the company, and because of how well respected he is by those in charge, when it's a big event, Eddie Edwards tends to be in the main event, whether it's Slammiversary, whether it's Bound for Glory, whether it's any other event or whatever. He goes in and out of the main event scene, but when push comes to shove, he'll be put in that role. And I can't say that I see that or hear this news or read this news, because again, we haven't seen it on television. That's another thing. When you do read these spoilers online, it's one thing to read them. You have to kind of wait till it does happen on television and then truly judge it. But I'm not going to sit here and say that Josh Alexander versus Eddie Edwards is going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be fine. But as a Bound for Glory main event, you know, this time last year it was Josh Alexander versus Christian Cage, or Bound for Glory last year rather, it was Josh Alexander versus Christian Cage, and that was very, very exciting. Again, it's fine, and I'm sure it will live up to expectations, and I am interested to see what they do when it comes to the faction side of things of Honor No More. Clearly, they have big plans for Honor No More. Obviously, they had the match against the Bullet Club on Friday, and the stipulation was that if they lost, they would be forced to split up. But of course, they won. They defeated the Bullet Club, and because of that, Matt Taven and Mike Bennett have opportunities at the Impact World Tag Team Championships, currently held by the Good Brothers, who are currently in the Bullet Club. And we know the Bullet Club, well, rather the Good Brothers, are leaving Impact Wrestling at the end of this summer. So the chances are you're going to have Matt Taven and Mike Bennett be the Impact World Tag Team Champions, which then does go into Bound for Glory. And we could be looking at a situation where the booking here is Impact Wrestling attempting to put all of the championships on Honor No More. Again, I don't know how I would truly feel about that, because I do wonder how much longevity is left with that faction, given that it's a faction based on ex-Ring of Honor guys and that were kicked out of the company when it went on hiatus, but Ring of Honor is still around. I know they've pivoted to sort of saying it's not so much about, you know, Ring of Honor, more just about honor in pro wrestling, and specifically honor in Impact Wrestling, with Eddie Edwards becoming the leader of it, I guess. But that's going to be the main event for Bound for Glory. A couple of other notes about the events that they've done recently. Some really positive notes, it must be said, about Impact Wrestling is that this week's Emergence event in Chicago was sold out, which is fantastic news. And the TV tapings were also sold out. And that is the benefit of running those much smaller venues that Impact Wrestling does, is most of the time they tend to sell out. I mean, in a strong market like Chicago, even a smaller company like Impact Wrestling running a smaller venue, you would expect them to sell out. That's why AEW, who has got a really strong foothold in Chicago, obviously they got All Out later next month, but that's why they can run. How many events do they run in Chicago per year? I mean, they run an entire weekend. They have multiple TV tapings there, you know, and I think they basically last year they did All Out in Chicago, and then they went back for Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken, and such a short period of time, but they still sold out. Chicago is one of the best wrestling cities in the world. It's right up there with Philadelphia and New York and Texas, even though some cities in Texas, it must be said, can have some pretty flat crowds. But Chicago is always a great wrestling city. So great news that Impact Wrestling are selling out those venues. I don't think they're going to move to any bigger venues anytime soon. I'm not going to say the demands are that high, but certainly that is positive news as well. Kushida and the Motor City Machine Guns will also be a regular tag team going forward, which is fantastic to see. As I mentioned, Kushida and Alex Shelley have a ton of history from their time in New Japan, so it would only make sense that they merge together the Time Splitters and the Motor City Machine Guns, so that's great to see as well. But let me know your thoughts on the main event of Bound for Glory in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button, be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.